afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for being here. My name is Walter. I'm the wholesale accounts manager and sales rep for Biscuit Head, and I have the pleasure of introducing our Grow series. Up first, I'd love to give a shout out to some of our sponsors. Is Elijah here? Just wanted to double check. I didn't think I saw him with Emergency Tech Repair. That's Elisha Lewis. I believe I did see Miss Melissa Bradley here. You want to stand up and say hey?
Hey everybody. So I'm Melissa. I am the supervisor with Pratt & Whitney in the operations side. Pratt & Whitney has hired, I guess I go up here so you guys want to turn around.
Yeah, come hang out with me.
So Pratt & Whitney's hired a little over 800 people so far. And we've got a brand new 1.2 million square foot facility. It's gorgeous. If you guys ever get a chance to ride across from the Arboretum, you can come up to the roundabout and you kind of see the building. It's huge. We've still got a lot of positions open. So if you guys know folks or you're interested in a move, go to PROpelAVL.com and look at our positions there in Asheville. I wore this shirt specifically today to show you guys. So Pratt & Whitney participates in a lot of community events. And so when we go out in those community events, instead of wearing our uniform shirts, we wear these cool t-shirts, which is made locally. And we usually do 2 events a month where the employees go out and do something. A lot of things with veterans. We do a lot of things with the schools, going in, taking backpacks and things like that. So Pratt & Whitney loves the community. We love Western North Carolina, and we love being part of PROpel. We love to see young folks propel and excel in their careers. So thanks for having me.
And our next sponsor I'd love to shout out is Western Carolina University. We've got Andrew Johnson representing today.
Good afternoon. I'm Andrew. I'm with Western Carolina University programs in Asheville. So we are the branch campus over in Biltmore Park. And we primarily do all professional programs and graduate programs. So our only undergrad, we have an undergrad in engineering and an undergrad in accelerated bachelor's of nursing, but all of those typically people coming back for that second career. It's a post-baccalaureate or graduate into social work, counseling, master's of business, public affairs. There's a lot. You can go online. I don't have to read them all off to you. But what I do want to highlight, which I will read off, is that we have kind of redone, regrouped, and reorganized our, what's the official term, our non-credit kind of courses, our Division of Educational Outreach, basically. So I'm going to kind of tell you what they are doing this fall, to give you an idea of what else we are doing outside of just getting a second degree, because sometimes we don't need it. I'm not going to push you into debt if you do not need the debt. Sometimes we don't have the time to go back to school for a full degree. So they are kicking off a managerial leadership certificate, which is a 5-part series. You can sign up for one, or you can sign up for all of them through there. There is a full grant life cycle management certificate program, Lean 101 Workplace Essentials, and then engaging veterans in civilian employment. And then in October, we have crisis communication. So it's just kind of a little bit of what we are doing at programs in Asheville, which is just right down 26 across from the REI down in South Asheville. We are so happy to be here. Great, thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. Y'all catch Andrew at our karaoke in October. More on that later. Also, Melissa said she just wanted to hang out with us a little bit longer.
I forgot one thing. So today is Amy Jackson's birthday. So let's go ahead and practice that karaoke. Andrew, you ready? Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Amy. Happy birthday to you.
Thank you, Melissa. Happy birthday, Amy. Our Grow Series sponsors include Asheville Sun Tzu Martial Arts, and standing in for them is the birthday girl.
Tony Morris is not able to be here today, and staff meeting asked me to jump in for him. Asheville Sun Tzu Martial Arts is a great supporter of the chamber. If you don't know anything about it, you need to take a look at it. They do after-school programs. They have classes from 3-year-olds to 83 years old. The 3-year-olds they call mighty tigers, and they're the cutest. They have a white outfit on. They're the cutest animals. It's a good practice for your self-discipline as well as exercise. And as he says, you get to scream a lot when you're in class. If you're interested in Asheville Sensu martial arts, please just know. Thank you.
Thank you, Amy. All right. I'd also love to give a shout out to Forbes Mazars. I hope I'm saying that right. Xavier.
Yep. I'm Xavier with Forbes Mazars. We've been in the Asheville community for over 40 years, providing audit, tax, bookkeeping, anything you think of in terms of business services. We recently formed Forbes Mazars, gives us access to national talent to do things on a large scale, as well as still have the local resources to provide expertise on real estate, dealerships, and nonprofit work. So great, we'll talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah, Gray Worthy here as well. Been with the firm for a little over 8 years, primarily focusing on our nonprofit practice specifically, so offering audit, tax, consulting services as well. Also offer for any of our friends or clients or prospects various webinars, things like that may be of service or use to you throughout the year as well. So if there's anything specifically you're looking for, whether that's nonprofit or within any other position, so commercial products or construction or anything else, have very specific things that you could be looking for from a financial standpoint, but as well from an operations standpoint. So have those things that we can offer as well.
All right. Thank you. And last but certainly not least, I'd love to shout out Bears Barbecue. I don't think I saw Willow here. Just checking. I'm moving right along. I'm very pleased to introduce today Laura Herndon and Jeannette Butterworth. Laura is an attorney who joined the team at CFWNC in 2021 after more than a decade in advancement leadership at the University of North Carolina, Asheville, and several years practicing law in Atlanta, Georgia. Laura and the development team work directly with individuals and corporations and nonprofit organization fund holders to provide gift planning support and professional development opportunities. Let's see, Laura has been an active community volunteer, having served with the Chamber of Commerce, Junior League of Asheville, and Children's Welfare League. She's a graduate of Wake Forest University and Cumberland School of Law at Samford University. We also have, again, Jeannette Butterworth, a senior consultant at WNC Nonprofit Pathways, who brings over 25 years of experience in the nonprofit sector. Jeanette's journey began as a Peace Corps volunteer in Paraguay, South America, focusing on community development and health education. Proficient in Spanish, she has expertise in grassroots organizing, nonprofit management, resource development, grant writing, program coordination, and strategic consulting. Jeannette has contributed to various boards and played a key role in launching multiple nonprofits over the years. Y'all, give it up.
I'm going to go first. Thank you, Walter, for the introduction, and Sydney for the coordination and invitation to speak today. I am Laura Herndon. I'm here on behalf of CFWNC, which stands for, does anyone know?
Community Foundation of Western North Carolina.
Community Foundation of Western North Carolina. Is anyone familiar with community foundations in general? Yes, maybe some yeses. Okay, well, we have one here in Asheville, but we serve a broader region, which I'm going to talk about in just a second. And so today I'm going to talk a little bit about the Community Foundation, the work we do to connect needs and resources in our region. And then the part that you're probably all here for and have been waiting for, Jeannette's going to jump in and talk about the work that WNC Nonprofit Pathways does, specifically addressing some questions you may have about nonprofits, what they aren't, governance structures, being a good board member, and that sort of thing. So we're going to get to that part, I promise. There's a time for questions at the end of my section and at the end of Jeannette's, but just jump in with questions if y'all have them as I go along. Okay, here we go. So the Community Foundation of Western North Carolina is 46, almost 47 years old. We were founded in 1978 to, like I said earlier, connect needs and resources in our region. You can see in the blue box at the top, this is our official mission statement. We inspire philanthropy and mobilize resources to enrich lives and communities in Western North Carolina. How do we define Western North Carolina? Because I know there are varying definitions of what that means. We define it as this, not the state of Vermont, but the same size as the state of Vermont. This 18-county region, which includes the Waller boundary. You can see here that we have three main functions. We make grants. I'm going to talk about that in a moment. We provide regional leadership, and we facilitate philanthropy. Last fiscal year, so our fiscal year runs July 1 through June 30, we sent $24.8 million out the door in the form of grants. And we have $435 million in assets under management. So these are all charitable assets. We are a 501c3 nonprofit public charity. So when you make a gift or ask the community foundation to manage some of your assets, you are making a charitable gift to our foundation. So this is a little more detail about our grant making. You see 24.8 million and think, wow, that's a lot of support in our region, and it is. But most of it is donor advised. So our donor advised fund holders make up the largest sort of section of our fund types. A donor advised fund, sort of like a charitable savings account. You make a charitable gift, the money is sitting there, and so the charitable gift has been made to the community foundation, and the money is there for you to have the privilege of making grants with, so that you call us and say, I'd like to make a grant to these 5 organizations, and we send that grant out on your behalf from your fund. We also manage assets for nonprofit organizations, and I'm going to talk about that a little bit more in a moment. Then we have designated funds, which are for specific organizations, scholarships, which are scholarships, you all are familiar with the scholarships, field of interest funds, which support areas like education or animal welfare, women and girls, and then unrestricted funding. So really our discretionary funding that goes out into the community is a pretty small piece of this pie. And when we make our discretionary grants, we do so in these 4 main focus areas: education, cultural resources, natural resources, and human services. Human services is our largest grant cycle that happens each fall. So that's people in need is another way to frame that. We also invite our fund holders to co-invest in some of these grants. So when we're considering a grant for education, for example, we have identified various fund holders who've also said, I'm interested in education. And so we have asked them if they're interested in co-investing with us in that grant. It makes everybody's dollars go farther. They move money from their donor advised fund to support that grant, and it deepens their relationship with the nonprofit, and they get to see some of the sort of follow-up work that happens afterwards. So the second bullet that I mentioned of the sort of 3 main things the Community Foundation does is regional leadership. And these are just a couple of examples to highlight, but we are pretty nimble in the way that we can get funds out into the community. And so I put funding response as the first bullet here, with emergency and disaster relief as an example of this. So when COVID happened in 2020, we were able to quickly open a fund, our emergency and disaster relief fund. We accepted gifts into that fund from people and organizations and nonprofits all over the community, and we're able to quickly move grants out to meet people's needs. This was before the federal funding started to flow, so we saw an opportunity to get money and a need to get money into the community quickly during that time. Another time that we opened the Emergency and Disaster Relief Fund was when the Pigeon River flooded and caused a great deal of destruction in Haywood County and some Pennsylvania County. Again, to kind of get out in front of federal funding, which can take a lot of time to start to flow. Recently, when the Pactiv Evergreen paper mill closed in Canton, or announced its closure, we worked with partners, Blue Cross Blue Shield and Dogwood Health Trust, to open the Forward Fund. to get some money flowing into Canton to help their recovery and relief efforts quickly. Another example is our community enhancement grants. We do this in partnership with Dogwood Health Trust. These are smaller grants, $10,000 or less, that go to improve a Main Street kind of experience in some of our smaller towns and rural communities. We've done 3 of these cycles. I think the 4th and final one is coming up. This has been a pilot program of ours, but it's been great for some of the smaller communities in our region who need, a new streetscape or a new awning just to get people moving into these downtown areas and investing more in these communities. And we have many key partnerships, one of which is with Nonprofit Pathways. We have been a funding partner. It's really a sort of funders collaborative, and you'll hear more about it. Since the beginning, I guess, since they first started, and we continue to support them in their work. The Community Foundation has some affiliated and supporting organizations. You may have heard of Women for Women, which is our giving circle. It's been part of the Community Foundation since 2006. And Women for Women also makes grants from that fund to support women and girls in our region. We have a real estate foundation that accepts or considers and accepts gifts of real estate when appropriate. And we have 9 affiliate funds, which are out in our region, and they're community-based endowments, each having its own advisory committee helping recommend grants. And this was an initiative from the early and mid-90s to help the Community Foundation spread its reach across this very broad expanse of 18 counties. So when we go to Mitchell County, for example, the people who are on that advisory board really understand the nonprofits and the issues that are facing that particular community and help us make good grants for Mitchell County. There's one here in Buncombe County that's specific to Black Mountain, and this one I know about. We work very closely with professional advisors, so we can't do any of this grant making and regional leadership work if we didn't have individuals and corporations and nonprofits who choose to put some or all of their charitable assets with the Community Foundation. And one of the main ways that assets flow to the Community Foundation is on referral from professional advisors, so attorneys and accountants and financial advisors. And so we have a committee of professional advisors. We do an annual seminar once a year where we bring in a national speaker to cover a relevant topic, and we get continuing education credit for that. We occasionally do lunch and learns and social events with professional advisors, and we have some resources online in the form of a newsletter. We have many fund types. You saw that earlier in our how the grants go out pie chart. Reasonable minimums to establish a fund. We can also do some planned giving in the form of charitable gift annuities, gifts of real estate, charitable remainder trusts, and some more sort of technical planned gifts. And working with nonprofit organizations. So we don't just make grants to nonprofit organizations, and we probably interact with over 500 nonprofit organizations in any given year, either by making a grant to them in a competitive grant cycle or by sending a grant to them from the funds that they have with us at the Community Foundation. We will have 134 nonprofit organization fund holders representing more than 215 funds. So some organizations have multiple funds with us. And when a nonprofit opens a fund with us, they get access to our planned giving platforms, like I just mentioned, for charitable gift annuities and kind of complex gifts. We also do twice yearly professional development for that group of fund holders. And we speak with their boards and help work with them on the financial pieces of their fund, because we are the asset managers for at least that piece of their assets. So here's some ways to get involved. Of course, you can give, but volunteer. We have a few volunteer opportunities. We have several committees. They're all sort of internal facing, right? So we don't have like something where you can go and like serve in a closet or, you know, direct service type opportunities, but we have committees, and occasionally spots open up on our committees, like a scholarship committee or affiliates. If any of you live in one of those affiliate communities that I identified earlier, they have advisory boards. We have committees that serve our board, our governing board as well. And the Real Estate Foundation has its own board. So if you're a real estate professional, there's a board service opportunity there too. And then just help us spread the word. Most nonprofits, at least in this community, tend to know about us, but we have a great set of resources on our website for grant seekers. And we want to make sure that people know about the grants that are available to nonprofits and the many opportunities that we have for partnership, including Jeannette, who's coming up next. But I want to pause before I pass it over. Any questions? I went through a lot quickly, I realized, but my contact information is in the handout, and I think I put some cards on the table. I ran out, but my contact information is in the presentation as well. Yes, Leanne.
Can you elaborate some on your enhancement project? You were talking about how you go in, can you give us some examples of things?
Sure.
In places?
Well, I probably have to pull up the website to give you a specific recent example, but, so it's a 1-year pilot program that supports rural economic development for driving people into the downtown area. So for example, I think there was one in, and it's more for the counties outside of Buncombe. But I'll follow up with you, Leah. There's an entire, very comprehensive web page about this and some of the examples, the more recent examples.
Is Madison County one of your areas that you work with?
Madison? Yes. Yes, I will send that to you. I don't want to just make one up. I remember there was an awning, and I remember that there was one in, gosh, maybe Nebo that was like a streetscape, landscaping, but I'll just follow up with you. Thank you. Yes?
Can you explain what an endowment fund is for everyone that's unfamiliar?
Sure. Yeah, good question. We do operate an endowment-based business model. An endowment is a fund that is set up to be around forever. So when you make a gift, so let's say of $10,000, we preserve that as the principal. It's invested. It's supposed to grow over time. Of course, it varies with the market. And we apply a spending policy each year. And so each year we make available income from that corpus, from the principal amount. So our spending policy allows right now for 4.5%. So that would be, if I'm doing my math, what, $450 would be available from that fund. It would continue, but the fund would be there for you or for your organization in perpetuity. So as it continues to grow, the spendable income also continues to grow. Yes.
And you make that spending budget not based off what the market's doing. It stays stable no matter, within your foundation, no matter what is going on in the market.
That's a good question. Yes, so long as the fund's historic gift value does not drop below its current value. So more or less, if it goes underwater, we then use a 2% spending policy instead of 4.5%. That really only comes into play, it came into play in 2008, 2009, comes into play with newly created funds. So there were some funds that were created in, let's say, March of 2021, and then the market took a pretty big dip then, I think it was 21. Some of those funds, they were established with 50, they immediately lost, let's say 5. So their historic gift value dropped below their value. So we used a 2% policy just to allow them to recover some of that principal back before we could start back with 4.5%. Some of our funds though, so caveat to that, We have funds that just have a minimum fund balance instead of operate as endowments, so our donor advised funds. Most people set them up with a minimum fund balance of $10,000, and so anything over that $10,000 is available for grant making. Some of our nonprofit funds operate that way as well, just with a slightly higher minimum fund balance.
And if people wanted to give, is it something that they work with their advisors on, or do you have advisors there? Like if someone were to say, hey, I really want to speak with someone about the nonprofits you guys work with to see like maybe where I would want to give, how does that work for people?
It can work that way. We're very careful because we serve all nonprofits in this region to not shop nonprofits in front of our donors. But occasionally we have donors or fund holders who say, bring me things in human services, or newcomers to town. I often find this. We used to support Humane Society in California, and we want to know, we want to come in and meet with you and know what kind of work you do in this region, what grants you make in this animal welfare area. And we will do that and provide some research. I think if, for them, if someone is looking to give some of their current assets or their estate assets, then usually those conversations start with an advisor and then end up with us. Sometimes they start with us and end up with the advisor, so that all of the plans are sort of cohesive and arrows are pointing in the right directions. But it just depends. The one thing we don't do is say, hey, let me tell you about all these nonprofits who are doing these capital campaigns, because that would be all we would do all day, every day, and it's hard to pick and choose in that landscape for sure. Anything else? Okay. Questions? I'm not going away, so if you think of anything else, ask me. Turn it over to Jeannette.
I'm Jeannette Butterworth. I use she, her, ya pronouns. Thank you for the introduction earlier, and thank y'all for inviting us to be here today. If you can't hear me, let me know. If you have a question, shout it out, and we'll talk it through. But I want to start with a question for y'all. How many of y'all have served on a board before? Yay for that. That's awesome. And how many of you are working for a nonprofit right now? That's great. Okay, so we may have some good things to talk about in here. That's great. So as Laura said, Pathways, WNC Nonprofit Pathways, we are a funders collaborative. We were started back in 2006, and we were started by a group of foundations, so the Community Foundation of Western North Carolina, Cherokee Preservation Foundation, United Way of Asheville Buncombe, and at that point, Mission Hospital. Those were the four original funders or creators of Pathways. And what the leaders of those foundations found is that organizations that are kind of east of Burke County, Charlotte Way and out to the east, have a lot more access to resources for being strong. So we have the North Carolina Center for Nonprofits, which supports nonprofits. There's lots of things going on in the Triangle. In the center of the state, gets less as you go out to the east. But for these funders that are based in and serving Western North Carolina, they decided to pool their resources together and create a collaborative of folks that can support nonprofits. So I always say Pathways is a little bit similar to a chamber of commerce, but we're for nonprofits. So what we do is we help build business, the business of nonprofits, and everything that means. We've been joined since by the WNC Bridge Foundation and Dogwood Health Trust, two of the newer foundations in the region. And we're supported also by the Duke Foundation, which is in Charlotte. And so all of these funders put money into a pot each year to make our budget. And then our job as coordinators at Pathways, there are just three of us that do this work of coordinating. We talk with the nonprofit leaders in the 18 counties, the same footprint as the Western North Carolina Community Foundation. We triage, if you want to use that word, we're like the support system, we're your person. if you're on a nonprofit board, if you're a nonprofit leader and you're struggling or you have questions, that's why we're here. So please, if you take anything away from this today, like take my number, my card, and feel free to email, to reach out to us. We all love nonprofits and we're kind of organizational wonks, and we would love to talk to you about your organization and help you to make it stronger too. So our mission is to strengthen the organizations that are based in and serving Western North Carolina. And Pathways is unique in the state, in the country really. There's nothing like it that I've found, in that we are a true funders collaborative. We are not a membership organization. Organizations don't have to pay us much money to access our services because of our funding partners. So we have wonderful workshops, 6-hour workshops that lead towards a certificate in nonprofit management. They cost $50 each if your budget is over $50,000. They're free if it's under $50,000, or if you need a scholarship. We want people to be in these classes and nonprofit leaders to get the skills and the tools that they need. And so you will not find anything within Pathways that you cannot afford as an organization. If you are based in and serving in Western North Carolina, the highest amount we charge for anything is, I think, is a $500 fee for a service that, we pay $15,000 to the consultant for. So it's engagement money, mostly because, we all know that if we write a check for something, we're gonna value it. I'm speaking for myself. My people are capitalists. We come from that community. We know that if we pay for something, we're gonna value it differently than if we get it for free. And so there's a little bit of engagement money in what we do. So we do workshops, we do coachings, we do on-site trainings. We'll come to an organization and do a board training or a fundraising training, or financial coaching if you find yourself in a mess, whatever that mess is. We are here for you, and everything we do is confidential. So we do not share anything with our funding partners in terms of dirty laundry or issues or concerns or anything like that. We're here for nonprofits. The funders are gonna know that say Youth Outright is doing a board training with Pathways, and that's a good thing. You always want your funders to know you're doing that type of capacity building. But we don't share any of the conversations or any of the needs or anything with them. So there's a big firewall there. Let's see. So, just imagine Western North Carolina without nonprofits, really. What do you see? I think this is what it would be. There's not much life. There's certainly no color, there's no texture, there's no connection. Nonprofits are really important to our country in general, and to this region, especially in rural areas. Nonprofits fill in the role, fill in the gaps where government doesn't reach or can't reach or won't reach. And nonprofits will rise up. That's what we do as people. We come together and we problem solve. And so nonprofits are out there filling needs that aren't being filled in other places or with other resources. And so here in Western North Carolina, the Chamber is a nonprofit. The Arboretum is a nonprofit. We've got theaters that are nonprofits. We've got anti-poverty groups. We've got workforce development. We've got organizations that help folks figure out their finances and build generational wealth. We have folks that take care of animals. This lady, I don't know if she's here, but I love her because she knits sweaters and hats for sea turtles. Saves them. United Way is a nonprofit. Believe it or not, the NFL started out as a nonprofit. It is no longer a nonprofit, but it started out as a nonprofit as a way to protect. Actually, they became who they are as a way to protect labor a little bit better than they were able to as a nonprofit. Human rights organizations, environmental organizations. What we don't have on here are some hospitals in the region, a lot of higher education, some really large organizations. When Mission Health was a nonprofit, it was the largest employer in the region. And so what is a nonprofit? Anybody help us with that answer? What is a nonprofit? What does it mean to be a nonprofit organization? Yeah.
Well, kind of in the name, the goal isn't to make a profit off of what you're doing, but to raise funds to be able to help the cause that we're passionate about.
So dollars go towards a cause, a mission that people are passionate about and working towards. Anything else?
Providing services and programs to meet the needs of the child care gap or
Right.
living arrangements like that.
That's right. It benefits the community, the social fabric, not a person. Anything else? Those are two good ones. So the official or unofficial definition is a nonprofit organization does not distribute its surplus funds to shareholders. It puts it back into its mission. So if y'all are all shareholders of a $1 billion company, then you would receive money if it's a for-profit company. If y'all are all members of a board of directors of a $1 billion company, any surplus funds are gonna go back into the mission of that program, to build it, to maybe meet another need, to solve big social problems. And you know, the idea of a nonprofit is that we wanna work ourselves out of existence, really, because nonprofits are here to solve complicated, complex social issues. One good example of that is there were a lot of organizations back in the 80s and 90s and into the late 90s and 2000s that were working on HIV/AIDS. And research came so far, and there's so much now that can be done. It's not the same landscape anymore. And so a lot of those organizations celebrated and closed, or celebrated and went on to do something else different. So that's what a nonprofit is here for. It's to solve the problems. It's not to exist as a nonprofit organization, but it's to try and fill the gap. Unfortunately, a lot of the gaps will likely never be filled, but some of them will. And so when we look at Western North Carolina nonprofits, so public charity, same thing as nonprofit, there are over 4,000 of them in the 18-county region. A lot of those are churches. A lot of those are really, really small organizations. And when a nonprofit is very small, they're not, they don't have to report to the IRS in the same way that they do if they have a larger budget. So a lot of these have a budget under $25,000. But the ones that are required to file a tax return are the ones that are a little bit bigger. And there are 1,268 of those as of 2023 in Western North Carolina. And here's how they're distributed. The western region is the western region of Western North Carolina. So this is the distribution over Western North Carolina. And you can see that the far west has 206 or so. The middle has more, 691. That's Buncombe County, Madison County, Henderson County, Transylvania County. A lot of people live in there. And then the more eastern part, again, it drops off a little bit. So the really rural areas, of course, are the east and the west of us. I thought it was really interesting looking at this that there are, of course, there's a big concentration of nonprofits in Buncombe County. Buncombe County is the seat of government in this region. So there's a lot happening right here in this region. But then look out west, out in, let's say, Jackson and Macon County. There's a lot out there too. And so I wonder, do y'all have an idea of like why that would be? Why is it Buncombe and then why is it out west? One of the reasons is Western Carolina University. There's a concentration of, there's a university there that supports nonprofits in all kinds of different ways. They have a Master's in Public Administration program. They're putting wonderful young professionals into the pipeline. They're thinking of nonprofits and forming them. around that academic center. One of the other reasons is it is very rural out there, and so, you know, it's a region there's a lot of vast mountains and then pretty concentrated areas where people live, and a lot of services don't reach out there. So, you know, there are areas all over Western North Carolina where there's no, you know, can't have a baby in your own county, you have to come here. And so there are a lot of these nonprofits in the far west that are filling the gaps, filling the needs. There's also a lot of environmental beauty and things to protect out there, the Great Smokies, Nantahala, Blue Ridge Mountains, so there are a lot of environmental groups out there. But I thought that was very interesting that there's a pretty nice little smattering out west. The other part is the Koala Boundary is located partially in Jackson County, and one of our funding partners is the Cherokee Preservation Foundation, and they invest money in art, culture, well-being of people that are members of the Eastern Band of the Cherokee Indian. Okay. Any questions before I keep going? So what do these nonprofits do? The big four are human services, general education, arts and culture, and fire and rescue. So one thing I didn't know when I was younger was that a lot of the fire departments have a board associated with them. There's a volunteer fire department, or there's an auxiliary board, all kinds of the services that we utilize that may be a government funded service still have a nonprofit side to it to support their work. But those top four represent 40% of all of the sectors of what nonprofits are doing, all the way from health down to scholarships, which is the smallest. I'm sorry you can't see this, I didn't do that very well. But economic impact of nonprofits is a lot more than people would think. It really is, and especially back in the day when Mission was here, these numbers were even higher than they are right now. But in North Carolina, $56 billion in revenue put back into the economy. 361,000 plus jobs. $19 billion in wages. $19 billion in wages paid to nonprofit workers. And then down here in the little purple is Western North Carolina. So $3 billion in revenue put back into the economy. 33,000 plus jobs, and what's the last one? 981 million, so almost $1 billion in wages. That's significant. The interesting thing about some of these numbers, or about the economic, pie of nonprofits, is it's not growing over time. It's very static. And so if you look at the GDP of the United States, it's just about always the same. And that is one thing that I think a lot of folks are trying to figure out is, why is that the case? Why isn't it growing? We're getting more and more nonprofits, we need more and more services. The dollars going in aren't supporting the growth. And so the way that feels on the ground is nonprofits don't always have the resources they need to do the work that they're doing. All right, a little quiz. The fact or fiction: a well-run nonprofit should have low overhead costs. And let's talk about what are overhead costs first. Anybody? What was that?
The cost of running the organization, paying salaries, keeping the lights on, things like that.
Right. So people, places, programs, all the things that you need to run your nonprofits. I guess programs we would pull out of that. It would be the people and the facilities and all the other things besides the program costs. So, fact or fiction: a well-run nonprofit should have low overhead costs.
False.
Who thinks it's false? Who thinks it's true? Who's honest? Some of y'all don't raise your hand. Well, the answer is that it's fiction. It really is fiction. This is an old, mindset that has come along for generations with nonprofits, in that it's a nonprofit. They need to not spend much money. They need to not have much money. They need to not, pay people very much. It's all volunteer, things like that. And the reality is, is that really what we want to solve our social problems? You know, think about like the Cancer Society. We want them to cure cancer. Or my family has muscular dystrophy, so I want them to cure muscular dystrophy. And everything that it takes to do that, I want to support. There's still folks out there who think you should have a 10% administrative cost or 20% administrative cost. And you do, I'm not saying you don't need as an organization to look at that, but this is one of the things that we can do as allies for nonprofits, is to really advocate for paying people. People are overhead. You know, the person that runs the organization would be considered overhead in a lot of situations. So we need to pay our people to do the work. All right, how about this one? Nonprofits can't earn a profit. True or false? Who thinks true? False. Yay. Nonprofits can certainly and should earn a profit. Nonprofits should have reserve funds. We should have enough money to grow our programs, to pay our people to do the things that we need to do. And it is okay for a nonprofit and celebrated for a nonprofit to make a profit. We just can't put those dollars back into people's pockets. It goes back into the organization. We can create endowment funds if there is excess, so that the organization can live on in perpetuity. All right, last one. Nonprofits don't have really a paid staff, they use volunteers. True or false? That's very much fiction. That's right. A lot of times, staff is not paid well, and so it may feel like they're volunteering. The reality is, there are many, many professions that are utilized in nonprofits. So as you're thinking about nonprofits and whether you want to serve on a nonprofit or you're working with a nonprofit, this is a framework that we use in just about everything we do when we're educating folks about nonprofits and their roles. And it really is true that nonprofits, just like any other organism, butterflies, humans, they have a life cycle. And it's documented, it's evidence-based. And so it's important to think about this as a board member or a staff member to help manage expectations about what you think the nonprofit that you're a part of should be able to do right now, and what they maybe can't do right now, but they may be able to do later. And so all nonprofits start as an idea. There's somebody who has an idea for how they're gonna solve a problem. They get enough folks around them to get the nonprofit off the ground, and they start up, and usually nonprofits start with their programs, because no one starts a nonprofit to create policies or build a board of directors. They're usually created to solve a problem. And so usually they start with program development, and this is totally natural. What'll happen then is those programs will start to run in time, they'll get a track record, and they'll start to feel like, oh my goodness, we don't have enough policies, we don't have enough this, we don't have enough that. And so that's really where Pathways can come in and help you figure out what needs to be in place for your nonprofit to be strong. But then there's generally this phase of infrastructure development, where you're gonna be building your financial practices, you're gonna be building your employment policies and procedures, you're gonna be looking at your leadership, helping to build your leaders. So looking at all of the pieces of a nonprofit that need to be in place to help it be strong for the long haul. Then impact expansion is when you're running on all cylinders, you're doing really great work, but then inevitably something happens where the organization starts to go over the hump. And that happens because of, it could be COVID, it could be a financial crash, it could be a leadership change, it could be lots of different things that are not the organization's fault, but it's the situation, it's the environment that we're in. And so a lot of organizations that we're working with have started to go over the sustaining edge down to decline, but then renew. And this is one of the healthiest, most active and vibrant loops an organization can be in, is to always be in the grow, sustain, start to decline, renew phase. If an organization is doing that, it means that they're really thinking about how they're doing, measuring their results, thinking about whether they have the right resources in front of them, always planning to try and stay ahead of the curve. And so we use this often because if you're with a brand new organization that wants to buy $1 million building, you're at the startup phase. And to say do a big capital campaign, you're gonna need some infrastructure in place. And so really you need to kind of give yourself a little time in that organization for the organization to grow, start to build, start to have an impact. So your donors will say, okay, this is a good cause to give to. But I think it really helps to think about expectations with this nonprofit life cycle. All right. So why does it matter? Y'all are business people, you have wonderful skills, you are networked, you are out there in the community, you are perfect folks if you have the inclination to serve on boards of directors or to volunteer with organizations. There are lots of ways that you can volunteer where you don't have to be a board member. You could help them with finance, you could help them think about planning. There are all kinds of different ways that you could offer your services. And so really those services that y'all have are critical to the nonprofits being strong and to survive. And so I encourage each of you to think about whether it's a good fit for you now or later. There's a time for everything. It might not be right now, but think about using your talents to support nonprofits in the region. And so what does the board do? Just real quick, the board sets that overall big picture. The board sets the container that the organization works in. The board says, here's where we're going on the map, and generally here's how we're gonna get there. And then the staff executes the plans that the board puts in place. That is a very oversimplified description of that, but the important part is that the board sets the big picture, makes strategic decisions, develops policies and guides, sets the budget, sets the organizational approach, and then the staff manages. The staff implements the plan. The staff implements the policies. They do the hands-on work to carry out the services. And when those two things get blended, it's really difficult for an organizational staff and board to execute their role. So it's very important to keep these things separated. When they're blended, that's when micromanagement happens. That's when board members may say, we need to know how many paper clips we're using every quarter so that we can set our office supply budget, things like that. Big picture, strategic is where boards are. So boards provide that oversight, they ensure the resources, so they set the budget, but they also need to be able to say, here's how we're gonna raise it and help with that. They set direction, oversight for the financials. Boards are liable. You have a financial, fiduciary duty to the organization as a board member to make sure that the organization you're a part of is doing its due diligence when it comes to every dollar that you're spending. So it might not be every teeny tiny dollar, but it's big picture. You have financial policies in place. How are we looking at them every year? Things like that. And organizations should have directors and officers insurance that covers board members to help limit any personal liability. But that is very important for board members to know that don't just join a board just to be there. Join a board if you can work on it, you can be responsible and really dig in there. All right. And then of course, prioritize board leadership for your own leadership development, for your own networking opportunities, and to be doing something that's really driving change in your community. Then you volunteer, you can offer your services, and you can collaborate. There are all kinds of different ways to get involved, and if you'd like to talk that through, I'm happy to talk to them.